The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is hereby called to order for its regularly scheduled meeting of November 20th, 2024. My name is Tim Rainey. I'm chairman of the board. Mr. Jeffrey Penzis serves as secretary of the board. Mr. Penzis, may I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Scurlock.
Yes, hello?
Here.
Here.
Mr. Claybrook.
Here.
Mr. Bruce.
Present.
Mr. Love.
Present.
Vice Chair Savage Selden.
Present.
Chair Rainey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is the oldest appointed governmental body in Memphis and Shelby County. We were established in 1925. The board hears appeals from the administration of the zoning ordinance, requests for variances from the zoning ordinance, and other requests articulated by local zoning laws adopted pursuant to the enabling legislation. The 8 members of the board are appointed, 4 by the mayor of Memphis and 4 by the mayor of Shelby County, with confirmation by the Memphis City Council or Shelby County Board of Commissioners. We serve without remuneration. At this time, I'd like to swear in the staff. You may remain seated. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the true self you got? All right, thank you. May I get a motion to approve the minutes for last month's meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Mr. Secretary, please provide us a secretary's report, if we have one this month, and then explain the procedure for today's meeting.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. As for the Secretary's report, there are no announcements this afternoon. The procedures for this meeting will be as follows. I will introduce each case as listed on the agenda. Copies of the agenda can be found at the front podium. For each case, the planner with the Division of Planning and Development will give a presentation. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present his or her case. After the applicant's presentation, those speakers in support will have a total of 5 minutes. Then those speakers in opposition will have a total of 10 minutes. And then finally, the applicant will have 2 minutes to provide rebuttal. These times do not include time for questions from and answers to members of the board. The chairman may provide additional time, provided both sides are given an equal amount of additional time. All parties who wish to provide testimony to the board will be sworn in by the chairman. If a member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a particular case on today's agenda, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card for the record. Speaker's cards are available at the front podium. Once filled out, speaker's cards can be submitted to any DPD staff member at the left podium. We do not need speaker's cards from the applicants since their names are already part of the record. After all parties have been heard, the board will close the public hearing, make a motion, and then deliberate on the case. If the applicant or any speaker would like to be heard after the conclusion of the public hearing, or if a board member wishes to hear additional testimony from any party, a 2/3 vote is required to reopen the public hearing pursuant to the board's rules of procedure. Please note that once the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and opposition will be allowed to provide additional testimony and/or rebuttal. All motions by this board will be made in the affirmative. The private acts governing the board require the affirmative vote of at least 5 members to approve an application, regardless of the number of board members present. The board may also vote to hold an application for a period not to exceed 3 months with the consent of the applicant or 1 month without the consent of the applicant. All section numbers that we refer to come from the Memphis and Shelby County Unified Development Code, or the UDC, which was adopted by the Memphis City Council and Shelby County Board of Commissioners in August of 2010 and became effective on January 1st, 2011. I will introduce the entire UDC and make it part of today's records, thus dispensing with the reading of individual sections. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases before us today under the provisions of Chapter 9.22 of the Unified Development Code. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all notice requirements have been fulfilled as required by the UDC.
All right, thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, the board will establish the consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the Secretary will call out each eligible case. If any member of the audience, staff, or board member objects to the case being placed on the consent agenda, he or she should do so by a show of hands when the secretary reads that case. Once the consent agenda is established, the board will vote on all cases placed on the consent agenda as a whole and will not hold individual hearings on those cases. Mr. Secretary, which items on our agenda are eligible to be placed on the consent agenda this month?
Item number 1, BOA 2024-38 at 1523 Kansas Street as approval with conditions. I'll just note that items 2 and 3 have been withdrawn. Item number 6, BOA 2024-92 at 3384 Thomas Street as a hold for 1 month. Item number 7, BOA 2024-99 at 190 Chelsea Avenue as approval with conditions. Item number 9, BOA 2024-96 at 657 South Highland Street as approval with conditions. Item number 10, BOA 2024-101 at 4758 American Way as a hold for 1 month. Item number 11, BOA 2024-102 at 181 Chelsea Avenue as approval with conditions. And item number 12, BOA 2024-103 at 614 Vance Avenue as approval with conditions.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as established by the secretary, which would be item 1, approval with conditions, 6 as a hold, 7 and 9, approval with conditions, 10 as a hold, and 11 and 12, approval with conditions.
So moved. Second.
All right. I'd like to remind the board that by voting on the consent agenda, he or she affirms that he or she has read the staff report and is in full agreement with the conditions. Mr. Secretary, may I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Mr. Love,
Yes.
Ms. Scurlock,
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Selden,
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
and Chair Rainey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. With that, would you call our next case that we're going to hear today?
Item number 4, BOA 2024-88 at 3588 New Horn Lake Road.
All right. Is the applicant present? Perfect. Y'all can sit down front if you want to. And then, is there any opposition to today's case here? Okay. Very good. If we could get a staff report, please, from Mr. Wardrop.
Good afternoon, Nichols Water Division of Planning and Development. This is BOA 2488. The applicant is Total Package Resort, and Mr. Bacchus is here as their representative. This is a use variance to allow spa massage uses, events, and outdoor recreation uses, as well as bulk variances. So, a little introduction. The applicant is requesting use variances to allow 3 main uses, one being spa, massage, gym, personal trainer, another being home-based wedding and event center, and finally, general outdoor recreation, including ATV, alternative vehicles. They are requesting some other variances to allow unsurfaced parking is the main one. I'm happy to go into those if need be. We're recommending sort of a partial approval. And of course, the applicants are here. They wish to discuss some of our recommended conditions. Here's a location map and the vicinity map showing where we sent public notice. Here is an aerial of the site, subject property outlined in red. Here's the surrounding zoning. You can see the subject property is in R6. It's predominantly residential zoning. Predominantly R6, but also RU3 to the south there. Here's the surrounding land use. You can see predominantly single-family residential uses, but it abuts an apartment complex to the south here. Going into their site plan, largely the plan is to essentially legitimize what is there now. Some changes they're proposing would be to improve the landscaping here by planting 3 new trees, install this new concrete drive here to the backside of the principal structure, and complete this pool house, which is currently under construction. The front yard fence does not comply with our required break every 100 feet. You may remember we discussed that provision last month. But our recommended conditions would require it to be brought into conformance. Here's some photos of the site from Horn Lake Road and from the interior of the property. You can see that pool house I mentioned in this photo on the right. Here's the rear of the principal structure. You can see it's being used for that spa use. These photos were taken by zoning enforcement, by the way. And here's another view of the interior of the property looking toward the back of the site. So going into our analysis, so as you're aware, this body in approving a variance is really required to make three main findings, right? The site has an unusual characteristic, that creates an undue hardship or practical difficulty, and that the neighborhood would not be injured, right? Those are the three major things. Well, we find that the atypical size is clearly an unusual characteristic. You can see it's much larger than all the properties in the vicinity. It's about 3¼ acres. And we're sympathetic to the argument that it would be impractical to use this site as simply a single-family home. So the crux of the analysis then is about this injury to the neighborhood, right? So we're recommending approval of the request that can be demonstrated to lack that injury. And that, in our view, justifies approving some limited commercial uses on the property. So the applicant's requested uses can be categorized into at least 7 distinct uses by the UDC, but really there are 3 truly distinct uses, and you can see them here, and I've already mentioned them. Our recommendation would be approval of the spa massage, outright rejection of the ATV operation, and then sort of a conditional partial approval of the home-based wedding event center. Starting with the ATV use, our reason for recommending rejection on that is primarily about noise. ATVs are loud. The site, as I mentioned, abuts an apartment complex to the south and is adjacent to single-family residential uses. I'm going to preface this by saying these are rough measurements taken with our online tools, so they're not perfectly exact. But with these rough measurements, you can see that to this apartment structure to the south, you're less than 250 feet from the proposed ATV use area, and you're less than 200 feet from the nearest single-family residence. Moving on to the home-based wedding and event center, when we were communicating with the applicant, we understood this request to be really a minor part of their business model. So we recommended allowing events similar to how events are allowed for residential structures. No more than 50 people, no more than 4 events a year, only weekends over by 10, and no ticket sales. I also want to mention that our number of events, 4 per year, which is one of the things the applicant would like to discuss, came out of discussion with them. The once per quarter was an estimate that was given to us, so I just want to make that clear. So the applicant is hoping to modify the conditions as shown here in red, so increase that limit from 50 to 100, go from 4 events per year, which is our recommendation, to 2 events a month, amend this weekends provision to include Fridays, and allow the events to continue until midnight instead of 10 o'clock. I also want to make clear that we have some enforcement photos. There is an open enforcement case regarding both the spa use and hosting events. Here are some photos that zoning enforcement took in July of this year. So this would be that driveway sort of on the, what would that be, the northern extreme of the site. So moving on to our recommendation, we are recommending approval with conditions, which you can see here, they're rather long. I'm happy to dig into those if a member of the board or anyone else would like me to. But the applicant has requested to modify just conditions 1 through 4, so here are those. I guess I better go through those. So basically, we would be allowing a variance for the massage, gym, also sports academy for recreational and competitive sports, and home-based wedding and event, subject to several conditions, but would not be allowing the ATV use. And the conditions at the home-based wedding event center would be limited to, under our recommendation, would be no more than 50 people, 4 events a year, no ticketed events, only Saturdays and Sundays, and over by 10 o'clock. And we would also require that fence to come into compliance, which is something the applicant would like to discuss. So here are their requested changes that were provided to us yesterday. It would basically allow the ATV use, but only the operation of the ATVs, not rental of the ATVs. I want to make that clear. It would limit the number of people at events to 100, go to 2 events per month, allow events on Fridays ending at midnight, and would basically allow that fence, which doesn't have the break every 100 feet. And then we've made some formatting changes. I'll let Mr. Bacchus jump in if he doesn't think these capture what he was going for. But we just made some formatting changes that, but they allow the same thing. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Okay, are there any questions for staff? All right.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I do have a question. Do we know the capacity of occupancy for the event center where they want to have it located?
So our recommended conditions would limit them to 50 people. They're asking for 100, but the events would be outdoors, so there wouldn't be like a, fire marshal occupancy.
Okay, other questions? All right, Mr. Bacchus, if you'll give your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Brian Bacchus, 5320 White Diamond Street, Memphis, 38109.
Okay, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and good afternoon to you. Always glad to see you again. Nicholas Waldrop, staff planner, has gone through the amendments very succinctly, and however, there are some of those amendments that we crossed out and also added. We would wish to the board to consider those. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Andre Summerfield to kind of give us an idea of the business plan and also how we got here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Summerfield, if you'll give your name and address for the record, we'll swear you in.
Okay, my name is Andre Somerville, 3588 New Orleans Lake.
Okay, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
The absolute truth.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, well, again, my name is Andre Somerville. I partnered with these young ladies when they came to me with an idea. I looked at what they were doing, and I wanted to be a part of what they were doing. There's some dynamic ladies, and they're doing something for the health of our neighborhood and the health of our city. So I just wanted to partner up with them. Miss Lanisa, Miss Marlowe, Miss Tamara, Miss Emma, Miss Tan. So matter of fact, I would like Lanisa to come up and show you guys what she showed me that kind of moved me to want to partner with them.
Okay. If you'll give your name and address for the record.
Yes, hi, my name is Lanisa Williams, 156 Star Blossom, Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay, Ms. Williams, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help
Yes,
you
I
God?
do.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, thank you. And I laugh at Andre because when he talks about a group of women getting together, he always kind of chuckles because he can't believe we are still working together. But we are. We came together doing our own 9-to-5s jobs. And COVID happened. And when COVID happened, we were already on Yale Road doing our health, because health is really big to each and every one of us. But we realized that we were missing to be able to come together as individuals, as our group, to be able to even do our own services. So we approached Andre and we asked him, could you get us a facility that would allow us to be able to bring our friends and our family so that we can do something during this lockdown time? Well, that's what it started out to be until we saw a movie. Marlo saw something called Sweet Magnolias. I'm sure the ladies on here have seen that from Netflix. When we saw that, we immediately knew that we loved where we were, not just for us, but for our community. Our hearts, the reason we're together is because we believe in our children. And a lot of times when you're giving back to children, they got to see a better way of living. And so that's where you hear the four-wheelers come in. It was such a big property that we were out there working with our kids, four-wheelers, and we've partnered with some churches. We've worked with Riverside Missionary Baptist Church, we've worked with Mount Vernon, we've worked with the police department, and so many other entities were seeing what we have. They were like, hey, why can't we come over and partner with you all and do some different events here? Hence, that is why we're sitting here. We are wanting to continue with what we're doing to be an outreach, and we actually had a meeting. We did a meet and greet for the community. We housed it on November the 2nd, and we invited about 70 people out to just come and hear our vision. People did show up to the point that they've asked us to volunteer to be the point of meeting point for once a month, just to continue to give back to the community that we're wanting to give back to. But looking at everything, we are not really here to try to make this a business. We are really here to try to be an outreach. Andre grew up in a community that the kids were not able to give back. We're not able to be able to see and hear and to be able to partner up with adults that have a background that can help. And that's what we want to do. We want to be able to show them that you can have and do different things. We do construction. We have IRS over here. We have individuals that work with insurances. We have an array of things. But the way to do this and to continue to keep us opening, we have to be able to have donations. So that's kind of why we got here. There are some great things. I thank you for taking the time to listen to us. And the reason for these couple of amendments is that we just want to be able to meet the community where they are.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Williams?
And so you said you have used the ATVs on the property for more recreational use?
Yes, ma'am. We have four-wheelers. And one of the things, I'm from California, and so one of the things we notice is that kids get stuck inside the house on those computers and on those laptops. And we said, you know what, let's pull them outside. So we have bicycles, we have four-wheelers, we have those little go-kart little things. We want to show them that you can have fun outside. There are things that you can do to get you off the computers and actually instill in them things in their ear and in their minds that they're not getting it through other ways.
And have you had any complaints from any of the neighbors when you guys have used the four-wheelers?
No, ma'am, we have not.
I have a question.
Yes,
Concerning
ma'am.
The four-wheelers. Do they operate on the unpaved areas of the property, or is it gravel? What type of?
We call it the swag backyard. And in the backyard, it's just that. So we put some obstacle courses, the little, what do you call those things? Cones. And we just go around the cones. That's what we do on regular grass.
Oh, on grass?
Yes, ma'am.
So how often do you have to maintain it, or how often are you planning to, with active ATV, four-wheeler usage? Because it's wet here, the mud
And great question.
and the runoff.
Okay, remember, we have 5 women, and we don't try to get in the mud. So we have not had that experience. So we really try to let the weather be our friend. So we don't take it out like that. It's just really, we've had it a couple of times when individuals are there. We make sure that the weather is conducive to what we're using.
I've got a question.
the changes that you're proposing to the staff's recommendations, which of them, if you can't get that change, would create the biggest hardship for you? And are there any that would prevent you from proceeding with the project at all?
Thank you. Great question. The biggest one that I'm talking to us is the 50. When you think about individuals, when a husband and a wife, that's 25 people. 25 people, if you add somebody, that could get us up to very quickly. And so that would be the only thing. We're utilizing the pavilion outside area, and we just didn't want to limit it. We have had some community with our churches that have come there that have utilized us. Mount Vernon, that has been there several times. And on those occasions, I mean, we've kept it down, but 50 is stretching it.
Okay, thank you.
Another question concerning parking for your events. Where is the parking located for your visitors?
Okay. Thank you, Board Member Scurlock. Again, Brian Bacchus. I'm going to hand out a copy of the site plan so you can get a better view of the site plan itself. If you notice, if someone. Your question was, where is the required parking? As you notice on the site plan, the new parking is to the rear. We provided required spaces at that location. However, within the zoning code, they also allow you to have gravel parking for outdoor entertainment. So we haven't specified a place at this point for the gravel parking because the terrain is very difficult, and we'll need in that rear portion. As a matter of fact, the rear third of that property is very topographical. It has its highs and its lows, slopes and valleys. So we're yet to identify that area that we're going to gravel for overflow parking. There will be no parking in the front yard, no parking to the sides unless the drive portions are available. So primarily all parking will be to the rear of the property.
If I can quickly jump in too, our recommended conditions would allow unsurfaced parking wherever, so long as it's behind the house. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All parking would be on site though, and not throughout the neighborhood.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Correct. And to add to that, Ms. Williams mentioned that she had a neighborhood meeting, a meet and greet. That meeting was not required by the zoning code, and I encouraged her to have that meeting. And they had a meet and greet. I think probably 5 to 6 people showed up. They were very enlightened by the project. And also we understand that there are some very prominent business leaders in this community. We also understand there are some very prominent neighborhood association leaders in this community, in Barton Heights, in West Junction, and Walker Homes specifically. So we're very concerned about what goes on in this property. Our main idea, or their main idea, and I'd encourage them to do, to maintain this property in a single-family residential character as much as possible, at least to the front one-third of this property. If you notice, there's an existing fence that's adjacent to the parking to the rear. That area to the front of New Horn Lake should remain a residential character. And I've encouraged them to do that, and I believe they will do that as well. And all the outdoor activity will be behind the main principal building. So, and mainly the outdoor recreation area will be to the rear of the property, to the rear one-third of that property. So, and I can show you in my presentation that the topography is very difficult on that rear third of the property. Mr. Waldrop, if you would, start the PowerPoint, just kind of give you an idea. I want to take you out to the property to show you exactly what's on the ground in its current conditions. These photos were taken on Monday. Is that on Monday? Yes. And yes, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like I'm having a little trouble
You can't open
getting it to open.
it? It's weird.
Is there anything in these photos?
Yeah, check, see if you can open those. Okay, we'll have to go this route, but that's okay. Go ahead, Nicholas, we're good with that. So I just want to give you an idea of what's there now. The front portion along New Horn Lake Road, the fence is existing, and we believe to allow for brick columns or any type of breaks in the fence would be an undue burden on the property owner. The fence has been there at least 20 years. I've been driving by this property for at least 20, 25 years. And so it's always been there, and it has been in that condition for a long, long time. So we're asking that the existing fence remain as is. It doesn't change, so it would not change the front of the property. And as far as the environmental court photos, those photos, that property, there are no cars in the front yard at this time. If I could if you go back to the photos, I want to get a photo of the current conditions of the property. Those are environmental court photos. If you could kind of go back to my photos, kind of show you what the conditions of the property is right now. So that's the front, and that's a view looking north along New Horn Lake Road. Next photo. It's probably the same view looking west along the south property line. Yeah, along the south property line. As you can see, that's the pool house that's currently under construction at this point. Mr. Summerfield pulled the permit for a residential accessory in-ground pool, so that's legitimate. Next photo, please. And that is a view, the same property line at a different view. And that's another view of the New Horn Lake Road looking north along that property line. As you can see, that ornamental fence, it's not really ornamental, but it's a metal tube fence, looks ornamental, in very good shape, very sustainable. So we believe that the existing conditions of that fence should remain as is and not change the view of that property from the front. I have other photos if you would go back, yeah. Go to about subject 9. Can't open that either? Jeez. That's okay. But anyway, I have some photos on my phone if you'd like. I'm sorry.
We're done with our 10 minutes
Okay.
for the presentation, but I want to add, are there questions though?
Yeah, let me ask,
And do you mind putting the amended conditions up for us?
right, good.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Just let me ask a question real quick. From the staff's report, it looks like there are two concerns that are of primary interest to them. And I just want to give you a chance to address those. One is noise concerns from the ATVs, and then the other one is for the wedding and event center. The staff was concerned about overusage, and so they of course, as you know, they want to limit it to 4 events a year with 50 attendees. I just want to give you a chance to respond to those two things before we debate and discuss it among ourselves.
All right, thank you, Board Member Bruce. Again, we believe the noise level will be kept to a minimum. As you notice, it's a very large parcel. It's 3 1/4 acres, almost 3.5 acres. And to the rear, I wish I could show you those photos, but to the rear, this property, it extends back, and around that area is a very, very wooded area on the north, east, and south. And adjacent to, there are no homes adjacent to those property lines. The nearest residential is the HCD community asset, which is multifamily homes in the old Fairway Gardens area. And that's probably the nearest multifamily. And the single-family homes are primarily to the front on the other side, across the street from New Horn Lake. And there's two single-family homes. To the south is a pretty large tract of single-family home, and to the north along the front is a single-family home and Walker Homes. I believe the extension of Walker Homes. We believe the noise level from that area, the rear portion of the outdoor recreation area, will be minimal. And as you know, that ATVs, the ATVs that they're using is not your typical four-wheel ATVs that make a lot of noise. They're very quiet, actually. They're no louder than your typical residential weed eater. And they're probably at least 150 feet away from your nearest single-family home. And furthermore, the topographical or the terrain of that property is very hilly. And the distance between those two in the single-family homes would be a sloped area and those kinds of existing conditions, which will not change. Your other questions were dealing with the number of times per month. Right. We believe that 4 per year is typical of any business. 4 events per year. Any business in this community can have special events four times per year without doing anything. Just go to the building department and apply for a special event permit. They can do that today, 4 times. So we believe that having to do that twice a month is more sustainable. The use of this property and the changes that need to be made for this property, we believe that 2 times a month give them the opportunity to create some revenue to try and to put back into the property, and also to make the property more sustainable for the principal use for a total package health and fitness spa. So that's their goal, and I believe they will keep their word in keeping this property to a residential scale and try to use it and be very concerned about the adjacent property owners in their rights and their property rights.
Okay.
Thank you.
How many ATVs do they currently have?
4.
4.
And we can put that in conditions as well. Under 2A.
I know you mentioned you all are still considering the on-site parking. Will you be using that area that you kind of designated for the recreational, or will it be a separate portion of the land parcel for the parking, on-site parking?
On-site parking? We calculated the required parking, so we provided the required parking for the use, for any habitable space. Now, outdoor recreation, we also calculated parking for that as well. However, I believe I came up to 44 spaces. But that area, I believe the applicant is willing to gravel an area that could hold 44 parking spaces in the outdoor recreation area, which will be beyond the chain link fence that separates the principal building from the outdoor recreation area. So there's I would say about 1.5 acres principal use and 1.5 acres outdoor recreation area. Two separate areas, but one parcel, one tract.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Conditions?
Would you be opposed to limiting the hours on Sunday, not going all the way to midnight, since that's kind of like right before a school night? You know, most like 10 o'clock as opposed to midnight on Sunday?
10 p.m., they're shaking it, yes, they're shaking their head, yes.
All right. Any other questions?
Does anybody need copies of this? No.
I think we're good on that. All right, and didn't have any opposition here today, so if we could get a motion to approve, let me get back to the top, BOA 2024-88 as conditioned by staff.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Discussion? Oh,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
you said as conditioned by staff?
Well, that's how, we're just getting the motion on. Yeah, we're just, yeah.
Tim, I'd like to put the condition in there about the number of ATVs. You know,
Okay.
I know it's 4 acres, but you get above that number and it turns into an ATV park, which could cause more noise and more disruption.
All right, so that would be under, where would you want to put that?
They said they had 4, so keep it at that number.
We can change 1F to read operation of up to 4 all-terrain vehicles.
Yeah.
I would achieve that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
We're in discussion. Does anybody want to hear a question from Mr. Bacchus? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
just a clarification. The conditions on the screen do not match what I have, and I don't have a copy of that.
Okay. You have a copy of his. I know we had some. I know there were some.
I believe Nicholas explained, this is essentially Brian's version, just in staff form.
Yeah, like I knew that we had to clean up D because of the midnight versus it had 12 p.m., which wouldn't have worked. When I looked through it, it looked like it kind of covered everything. So.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Let's go through these changes then. We're talking about the limit to 4. On 3, does anyone have a problem with changing it from 50 to 100 people at the events?
No.
Discussion on that. Okay. What about instead of 4, another big one, 4 events a year versus 2, up to 2 a month?
I'm fine with no more than 2 a month.
Okay.
I think I am too, but just to make sure we think about it, we're talking about going from 4 events a year to 24 events a year. That's a huge jump. I just want to make sure we understand how big of a jump that is.
But just a point of information, there were specifically 2 letters of opposition from neighbors on the same side of the road, one to the north and the south, explicitly complaining about the number of events and the frequency of the events.
Yeah, I wonder if there's something in the middle that everybody can be happy with, between 4 and 24.
Well, one thing to think about there is like probably nobody really wants an event in January, but you might want 4 events in June.
So maybe you say something like 12 a year. That way it's not tied to any particular month. Or whatever the number is, but base it on do a number per year as opposed to a number per month.
Well, I think we're already limiting, to me, the number of, I don't know what they had before, but we're giving them a cap on the number of individuals. I can't say that they had 200, if they've had several different churches and events for the police department, that can draw easily over 100 people. And I didn't hear, and we didn't ask testimony of the frequency of events and then their maximum number of individuals. But I would say that limiting what would be outside, I think to me is just, I'm like, Tim, certain months you may not have anything, and if we give them at least 24, they may not even meet 24, but they can't do 100 events, right?
Can't do 3 in a month.
Right. They can really do two a month.
Okay, okay.
What, in staff's mind, is the definition of an event versus just people coming there for spa services and dropping some kids off to run around on a four-wheeler? Like, what makes it an event versus,
Well, I guess they wouldn't be going for any spa treatment. Or right, it wouldn't be related to the sports academy. It'd be some other activity that they're telling people to come for.
okay,
Maybe I don't know, it seems like they had pool parties based on the photos that we saw.
okay, I'll accept that.
If I can jump in quickly too, I think part of it too is an event is advertised beforehand, right, as an event. So
Gotcha. I'd like to change D under 3 to have announced time of such event shall be no earlier than 11 a.m. and all guests will be off premises by 12 p.m. midnight Friday and Saturday and 10 p.m. Sunday.
Where you,
Add anything about everyone using
yeah.
time for that, because you don't want that to run till midnight.
No amplification ever past 10.
I think 10 is what it normally is.
I would say that, yeah.
Yeah, so E, we would add E, there should be no outdoor sound amplification later than 10 p.m. What about the fence, guys?
I don't have a problem with
I mean, you could tell, it's a nice looking fence, but you could definitely tell it's been there, like in some of the pictures, it wasn't just put up.
Down the street from the cemetery,
I don't have a problem with the fence.
which will get lots of.
I think it looks fine.
Question, wouldn't, so we have city regulations on noise. And, I know that some ATVs are not that loud anymore, racing ATVs, which I'm not expecting out there, are a lot louder, but they would still be under the noise ordinance, even though they're allowed.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure. All right, any other thoughts? Okay, with that, I assume y'all are ready to vote. If you'll give us a roll call, please, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce?
Yes, with all the changes that we discussed.
Yes, these would all be based on our discussed changes.
Correct. Mr. Love?
Yes. Can you?
I said Mr. Love.
It really sounds similar to me, too.
Sound like Ms. Gerlach. I agree,
Mr. Love?
yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Ms. Conrad?
Yes.
Ms. Gerlach?
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Selden?
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Chair Rainey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, you've been approved as a condition. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really sure what the conditions, what was approved here.
Well, you can have up to 4 all-terrain vehicles. You can have 2 events a month. You can't have more than 100 people. Your hours can only go to midnight, except for Sundays, which is 10 p.m. on those weekend nights. You can't have sound, like no outdoor music, microphones past 10. And then, and you kept the fence.
Okay. Well, any other conditions on the next page that need to be changed or amended? No?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in that case,
I think we took what you had and only limited the hours a little bit, sound a little bit, and number of ATVs.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Did we have opposition?
No, there was no.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, Mr. Secretary, if you call our next case.
Item number 5, BOA 2024-91 at 9701 Tracy Road.
All right, I see the applicant's present. Is there any opposition present today? Perfect. If y'all are great where you are, what we're going to do first, we're going to hear a staff report or update, and then we'll hear from the parties. Goodness. So Ms. Hull, if you'll give us a staff report, we've heard it before, but you'll give us a brief overview of where we were and what may have changed.
Oh, this one. No, it was a couple months ago. Yeah.
Thanks.
A couple months ago.
Okay, I'm LaTanya Ho from DPT. I'm presenting case 2024-0091. And we heard this case back in September. At the time, the applicant was asking for their business, their asphalt paving company, to be considered a home-based business. I recommended rejection of that case. They asked for a hold so that they can represent the case as a use variance, which will allow the use by right at this property. In addition to that, we are also asking for the variance to allow the encroachment into the side setback as well as the front setback, which were a part of that case. I'm going to run briefly through the case. The location map, this is in unincorporated Shelby County. It's in a conservation agricultural zone. So the yellow is the highlighted property. The pink on the land use map is the highlighted property. This is an area photo. I've added, it is the same as last time. I've added the applicant's recent area photo here to the left, which is what they provided with their new application. So they've made some changes that they mentioned before that we'll talk about. Site photos, I won't spend a lot of time. I'll just run through these of the property. These are zoning enforcement photos that shows the heavy equipment and vehicles that operate on the site, and they are exiting the site. This is the site survey that was provided with the original application, showing the layout of the site. Just briefly, this is the workshop that's been constructed. This is the residence on the site. This is a carport on the site, and of course a pond. To the rear of the site is where they're doing vehicle storage and equipment storage, and there's a shed area as well. In the reviewing the case, I had several primary considerations. In looking at the case this time, I'm not focusing so much on the residential aspect of the property and the use because they're no longer asking to be considered a home-based business. And so we're focusing primarily on whether or not this use is compatible with the neighborhood and the zoning. And that's where our focus is. So here I'm going to talk about the intent, definition, and the standards of the UDC's conservation agriculture zoning. We're going to talk about the classification of the company as an industrial use and its impact on the zoning and the neighborhood. We're going to talk about some of the negative impacts that the neighbors have discussed and have presented concerns on, and then we'll talk about the findings of facts as well. So the conservation agriculture zone, it is intended to conserve agricultural land and undeveloped natural amenities and preventing encroachment of incompatible land use on farmland and other undeveloped areas. The types, area, and intensity of land uses in the district are designed to encourage and protect agricultural uses and the conservation of undeveloped areas. So the intent of this zone is to remain undeveloped. The intent is for it to preserve the natural environment, the forests, the water resources, the ground resources, with the intent of preserving land for future farming and agricultural uses. And based on the current use that's existing on the site, that's proposed to continue on the site, I believe that this is in direct contradiction to the intent of the conservation agriculture. All of the site that's currently developed was developed once the applicant secured the property, purchased the property. And so it has actually encroached and damaged quite a bit of the natural amenities on the property. So when we're looking at conservation agriculture in terms of the uses that are allowed, to encourage and protect conservation and agricultural uses, the UDC strictly permits a lot of different activity in conservation agriculture. It's very limited in what you can do. And so I thought it was important to sort of take a look at what some of the allowed uses are and what's prohibited. So what I have here in this blue table is a list of the permitted uses. And as you can see, this is a summary of what is allowed by right. And it's very limited. So when we look at residential, only single-family residential. And that's important because it supports any agricultural uses, especially if it's a family-based agricultural use. For civic categories, the only thing that's allowed are public services, police, fire, substations, place of worship, city and county-owned facilities. It expressly prohibits things like daycare, medical facilities, even wildlife and animal refuges, which you would think would be something that would be allowed in conservation agriculture. Those are prohibited as well. In educational, it allows schools and seminaries, but it does not allow related dormitories by right, so no residential thing. Park and open area spaces, it only allows parks and recreational fields without lights and reservoirs. So some of the other open space type of uses are restricted. They don't allow them. The only utilities, minor utilities, and radio towers, even in commercial, of all of the various types of uses in our category of commercial, the only thing that it allows is horse stables and a post office. It doesn't even allow campgrounds. And then within our open space and agriculture category, it allows agricultural uses, which are listed here in this table to the right, but it does not allow the sale, rent, repair of tractors or related agricultural machinery. Now, if we recall, our applicant is currently and wishes to continue to repair the equipment that they use for their business, the tractors and those types of things on site. Our conservation agriculture zoning strictly prohibits that repair, even for agricultural machinery. And then any resource extraction is prohibited. No clearing is allowed, no grading is allowed, no dredging is allowed, no earth extraction is allowed. And as a part of the business, this company has done all of those things. They've cleared trees, they've dredged the land to put in a pond. They've done quite a bit of the things that are not allowed here. So the asphalt company is categorized as an industrial use. And the UDC specifically states that industrial uses by their nature create nuisance and are not compatible with residential surrounding areas. And so we remember that this particular property is in the middle of a residential neighborhood. It is residential on both sides, residential across the street, residential all around. Our UDC says that this industrial use is not compatible with that because of the negative activity that happens, the level of intensity that happens in these types of sites. Industrial is intended to accommodate high-impact manufacturing, industrial uses, excluding waste-related services. By nature, they create a nuisance, and which are not properly associated with or compatible with nearby residential districts or other less intensive mixed uses or industrial districts. And this particular use is categorized as a contractor services type of business, where it does primarily its services off-site. Now, we looked at some of the negative impacts. We talked quite a bit about this last time, so I won't go into the negative impacts per se on the neighborhoods, because we talked about that, but I do want to at least talk about some of the negative impacts as it relates to the conservation agriculture. So the development of the company, the pond, the storage area, and the subject property has had the opposite effect and intent of the CA district. It is an incompatible encroachment on the farmland and the undeveloped area. By being there, all the development that's happened is in contrary to what the intent of the conservation area is. It has removed and damaged more than 7 acres of agricultural and natural amenities that were on the site before it was purchased by the applicant. The use does not encourage or protect agricultural uses and the conservation of undeveloped areas, which is the intent of conservation agriculture. And the extensive pavement of the site, the movement of heavy equipment and vehicles, the extended storage of heavy equipment, and the historic presence and storage of asphalt and other material hurts soil conditions, imposes other environmental consequences on farmland and neighboring properties, including but not limited to soil erosion, soil degradation, contaminating water supplies, flooding, and habitat disruption. These are all the types of negative impacts that industrial uses such as this have on our conservation agriculture. And what I added here on the bottom are some photos of evidence of this type of degradation. So this is a heavy rain event that we had in our area in early October. And the neighboring property sent me photos of all the rain and the runoff that was happening from that site. So this fence here is the fence of the site. And this is all of the water that's draining from that site onto the neighbor's property on the side and running down the driveway. This is the picture of rainwater running from the rear of their site, so the rear side of the site, again, onto the site. And so this is just an example of how that heavy pavement and the activity that's happening next door is impacting the neighbor's site. So we talked last time, and we had neighbors here to speak in opposition, and we have neighbors here today. Not all of the neighbors could return, so I asked that we try and remember what their concerns were last time and consider those. So some of the complaints that we received were the continuous noise from heavy machinery and vehicles, unsightly industrial buildings. This building here is the workshop. It's the view of the workshop from the neighbor's property. My understanding that one of the issues was the glare. And so the applicant has, I believe, painted the roof to try to minimize the glare that's happening on that site. The other one was various smells from the property, asphalt smells, smells from the heavy equipment. I understand that there's no asphalt being produced on the site. Some of that asphalt smell could have been from the improvements that were happening on the site at the time, but there are continuous smells, according to the neighbor, from the site. Blinding glares from the building, heavy dust. So those heavy machines we saw earlier that travel throughout the property and onto the roadway creates a lot of dust. And as we saw last time, the neighbor here has significant health problems that are exacerbated by environmental conditions, and so this is a potential issue for him. Inability to sell their home. We talked about the neighbor, Ms. Hayes, who was unable to sell her home because no one wants to live next to a industrial facility. And so at the last meeting, we didn't make a decision, we held a case, but she had a potential buyer waiting for the outcome of that case to determine whether or not they were gonna buy her house. And so that's how impactful this is in terms of our neighbors being able to enjoy their property. And since our last meeting, I had an additional neighbor contact me who had found out about the property, and they addressed concerns about safety and traffic related to those heavy vehicles going onto the roads. Apparently the road is a winding road, there's a curve in the road, and so they're concerned about vehicles being on the roads as well. So one of the other concerns is about the potential expansion of the operation if we approve this. The characteristics of the site, this is a very long site. It's heavily forested, and so a lot of activity can happen on this site that is not visible to the naked eye. And so I have a couple of photos of the site. Our applicant included quite a bit of historical data related to what the site looked like. But I was able to find a photo from 1999, and it's not very clear. But one of the things the applicant mentioned was that the site was a dumping ground before they purchased it. And I wanted to show the condition of this site before they purchased it. And although you can't see really clearly, it's very heavily forested. I don't see a lot of dumping here. They mentioned in their letter of intent that there was some construction waste that was primarily around the residential structure. Well, that residential structure is here. So if there was some dumping happening, I'm assuming it was happening around this area per the information that was in the letter of intent. So I wanted to show the condition of this lot in terms of how much forest area that's been removed since the applicant purchased it. This is a image that was provided by the applicant in their new documentation showing the existing conditions. However, I was able to find this photo from 2024 that clearly shows that there's a third area of operation on this site that was not mentioned by the applicant in any of the previous applications. So I'm not sure what this is that's happening here, but this is a picture from February 2024 of this year that shows that there's another area that's been cleared. And there is a storage container. Someone's living in an RV, and it looks like there's some kind of facility here. I'm not sure if it's storage or what it is, but that has not been disclosed. And so when our neighbors talk about the potential of, expanding the use, the potential of additional negatively impactful activity happening on site that cannot be seen from the naked eye, this is the type of activities they're thinking about. And so I want us to keep that in mind when we think about this. Our neighbors have had very negative consequences related to this site, and they voiced that last time we were here, and they're here to voice it again, but I wanted to bring that to your attention. Now, in taking into consideration whether or not we should approve these variances, of course, we know that staff has to be able to support certain findings. I have to be able to support that there's some unusual characteristic on this site that prevents it from being developed according to the code, that there are practical difficulty or undue hardship that's not the fault of the owner, that this variance would not cause substantial detriment to the public good. And we've already seen that it has done that already. That granting this variance would be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the code and not be injurious to the neighborhood and the general welfare. What it is clearly not in harmony with the code, because the code says that as controversial agricultural district, we're trying to conserve the natural resources. And so it's definitely not. And it is injurious to the neighborhood in that it's causing erosion and runoff onto the neighboring properties. It's preventing our neighbors from being able to sell their home. It's impacting the health of one of the neighbors on next door. Granting of this variance will not increase the profitability of the owner or help them save money. So the decision can't be made based on that. And particularly for the use variances, we have to be able to find that none of the permitted uses are practical due to either an unusual characteristic, which we have established that there are none, or any physical improvements made on the property that are not the result of the owner. So I wanted to look briefly at the finding of facts, answer, and responses that the owner provided and respond to those specifically. So the owner has indicated that the property has an extraordinary narrowness, and it poses a significant challenge to reverting back to residential use. And its shape and size limit the feasibility of residential development if we were to adhere to the UDC. And as we talked about last time, and I showed you photos, this particular property is wider than most of the residential properties in the neighborhood. It is 240 feet in width, as opposed to the 150 feet average for the other properties. And the smaller lots in the area have homes as long as 100 feet. And this one could easily accommodate a home as large as 150 to 200 feet in length. So there is nothing restricting the size or existence of a residence on this property. The applicant also mentioned in their new letter of intent that the site was a dumping ground when they purchased it, and that one of the neighbors allegedly had a construction company that was dumping construction waste on the property. And that this dumping ground, as they called it, was illegally operating. It was non-conforming, And that long time industrial usage of this property made converting the property to exclusively residential uses impractical. And so in thinking about that, the first response is that illegal dumping is not an industrial use. So to say just because someone was dumping construction waste on the property, it makes it industrial, and therefore I should be able to continue an illegal industrial use is not a good rationale for the use. What illegal dumping is actually a waste-related activity. It is not considered industrial. And even if that were true, even if it were a dumping ground, the applicant was able to clear that site, and they were able to build a residence. And they could have built a residence as large as they wanted to on a site this size. So it did not prevent them from using the site as a residence, nor would it have prevented them from using the site for any of the allowed agricultural uses that the UDC permits. And so despite that dumping, there's no dumping right now, and there's no related site conditions preventing the residence that's there from being expanded or used. And it's not preventing the development of any agricultural uses. Lastly, related to the agricultural uses, the applicant indicated that none of the agricultural uses are practical given the exceptional narrowness of the subject property and the presence of a pond in its center. The pond was put there by the applicant. So we cannot consider the presence of a pond as restricting the use because it's the owner's fault that the pond is there. So they specifically called out their inability to sell agricultural equipment, having a manufactured home park, livestock auction, poultry slaughterhouse. All of these require a more regular shape for practical and efficient operations. So they pulled out those things that they cannot do. However, there are over 21 different types of agricultural uses listed in our UDC, and the majority of them can, in fact, be operated from that site in its current configuration, with its current width. As a matter of fact, according to the United States Department of Agriculture, successful and profitable agricultural uses can be operated on a lot as narrow as 50 feet, particularly considering that this lot is over a couple of thousand feet long. So we have a 14-acre lot. So, regarding the permitted agricultural uses, many of them are allowed. Of the 21 types of our agricultural uses in the UDC, most of them can be developed on this site. According to the USDA and other credible sources, including various university extensions, many agricultural uses can thrive, operate efficiently, and be highly profitable on properties the size and the width of the subject property, including but not limited to animal raising, livestock farming, including chickens, which is one of the agricultural uses that the applicant indicated they're interested in doing, row and field crops, grain, fruit, and vegetable orchards, plant nurseries, or a combination of these multiple uses. These can be profitably developed on lots as narrow as 50 feet wide. So in conclusion, I just want to summarize that we have this industrial company that's operating illegally. It's non-conforming. I want to remind us that there was an enforcement case in 2019 where the applicant was given a warning that they were operating illegally, but they chose to continue operating for 5 years at this site. And they chose to continue to put money into this site, improving this site, even though they were alerted that they were operating illegally. In addition to that, we believe that this industrial use is not compatible with the residential neighbors. It is in direct conflict with the intent and purpose of the CA district. I disagree that there are any circumstances preventing this property from being used according to the UDC. None of the finding of facts can be applied here. Lastly, the industrial uses have created significant negative impacts on the neighbors. We had two people of opposition speak last time. We have someone here to speak this time. And those particular negative impacts that the UDC says is typical of this type of operation has materialized in this neighborhood from this property. And then we find that this use is not in harmony with the purpose and intent of the UDC, and that granting this variance will cause substantial detriment to the public good and will substantially impair the intent and purpose of the UDC. So I am recommending rejection again, and I'm recommending that we do not provide any conditions to this rejection, no approval with conditions. I do not believe that any conditions will help to address the negative impact that this development has on this site. The applicant has proposed some conditions. These are slightly different than what was provided before. A fence of 8 feet in height. Again, my same comment as last time, an 8-foot fence does nothing in terms of shielding the neighbors from that huge metal workshop that's illegally placed in the front of that property. They've repaved and resoldered the site. They've added grass. They've made replacements and repairs to the gates and the fence. And here are some other, I won't read them all, but these are the conditions that they have actually imposed on the site. That concludes my presentation.
Okay. Are there any questions for Ms. Hall?
Yes, I have a question. You say the overall size of the property is 14 acres?
Yes, ma'am.
Does it qualify for a rezoning instead of since it's greater than 5?
Any property can ask for a rezoning. In my opinion, it doesn't change anything. If I were standing before a board and trying to,
versus like the use variance, I was wondering.
Yeah, the negative impacts that the site has is going to be there whether it's rezoned or whether it's not. So
understood.
Okay. Other questions for Ms. Hall? All right. If the applicant will come forward, give your name and address for the record.
Emil Schmicky, Schwedhead Law, 275 Jefferson Avenue. Still not a lawyer.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Go ahead.
Since we have opposition, we're going to go ahead and just hold everything until give them a chance to speak and then present.
Okay. All right, if the opposition would like to come forward and give your thoughts. And I have two names. I have Miss Nisby and Miss Haynes. If you'll say your
Mother
name.
and daughter, I'm Veronica Nisby, or Veronica Hayes Nisby. My address is 5150 Moundry Run Cove, Lakeland, Tennessee.
Okay.
My name is Diane Hayes. I'm at 10099 Tracy Road, Atoka, Tennessee.
Okay, and you all swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So my parents stay next door to this property, and I think my mom first reported about the possibility of it being a business back in '94, and nothing was done about it. Since then, I think she's made some calls, and it's just still kind of festered into where we are today. My dad has asthma. He would have been here today. He has health concerns. It's just to not take a lot of time. Nobody wants to stay next door to a asphalt company. My parents did have the property up for sale. They had some people that were interested. One particular party came out and said, we're really interested in the property, love it, love the beauty of the natural aesthetics of it, what's going on with the business next door. Of course, we were honest and told them, we are seeing what's going on with this. It has been reported. We don't know what's going to happen with it. And they opted to wait until we found out what the verdict was going to be last month. Of course, we didn't get a verdict last month, so that potential buyer is no longer there. When my parents first bought the property, it was because it was in the country. My dad's a country boy, grew up not too far from where they live now and wanted to live that way. The business just has negatively impacted their dream home. My dad has asthma, he has congestive heart failure, the smells, the sounds. I mean, it's just not conducive to have that type of business in this residential area. Thank you.
When did y'all buy the house? Like how long have y'all been there?
We built a house in 1988.
88, okay, wow. Okay, and then how often on a daily, like, do you see trucks in and out every day?
Every day.
Okay. All day long, or like beginning of the day, end of the day, or?
Sometimes all day long, but mostly every day, every morning, every evening.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions for the opposition? Okay, thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
We'll move back to the applicant.
So obviously we have held this for 60 days. The first one was to change it into a use variance. The second one was just get to spend more time with the neighbors, trying to ameliorate their concerns. We'll get into that in a little bit, kind of a tale of two different willingnesses to work things out. When Josh told me we were taking this case, the first thought that came into my head was why? Because I was, I hear asphalt, and so what I thought this was going to be is not what it ended up being. So I want Josh to go to the next slide here. This is standard construction on Frank Road. So this is going to be a hot mix asphalt plant. This is what I thought that we were taking. Okay, there's another picture here too. That's what I thought the whole property was going to look like. They're obviously excavating materials. They're making the asphalt there. People are coming to pick up that asphalt to take it to job sites. That is not what we are doing at all. What this parcel is being used for is essentially storage of the vehicles that they use to get this done. So this is what our parcel looks like, okay? Now, the staff report, it is what it is, but plus or minus 7 acres, which would be 50% or more. If you look at the red piece, which you can barely see it, that's the footprint of the building. Blue is devoted to ASPAC. It's going to be the dispatch center, employee parking, indoor storage. And then we have that yellow spot. That is where they park their vehicles with ASPAC. That other, the other clearing that she showed, that is used for deer hunting, which is allowed out there. And so that's where they're going to spend the night out there or something like that. That's what that part is. So in regards to the way that they operate on this parcel, they will maybe be there in the morning and they'll maybe be there in the evening. That is pretty common for anyone that lives on that road that goes to work. When it is raining, they cannot work. They do not work on the weekends. They cannot work during the winter. And so when you take that all into consideration, they're working about 100 days of the year. In addition to that, when they are on site, they do not bring the equipment or the vehicles back every single day. They will leave it on site until it's done. They're in their kind of busy season right now. They might not even be bringing them back at all. They might be taking it straight to another place to get another job done. So this is not a constant, from 9 to 5, trucks rolling in, trucks rolling out. It maximum twice a day. There's never the entire staff there. I want to say never, but very rarely is the entire staff there. That would be 12 people. Next slide. So speaking of, actually go back one slide. So I'd like to point out, you see that green square, that is going to be the Wainwrights. And you can see where that barn that is built in the blue. You cannot even see the Hayes' building from this picture here. The Wainwrights are very close to everything that's going on at ASPAC. Next slide, Josh, now. And so during the 60 days, we got to sit down with the Wainwrights quite a few times. If you remember Mr. Wainwright, who had the oxygen pack when he came in here, he's actually slated to get 2 new lungs on January, which is awesome. Just was really happy to talk to both of them this morning. But if you see what he says, thank you for the prompt reply. If the conditions below are what will be presented to the Board of Adjustment, Karen and I feel that our concerns have been fully mitigated. So if you guys were here last time, they had a lot of concerns, And that's what our conditions are. So the conditions that, didn't want to be put in there because it was rejected, the neighbor that is closest to what's going on had everything fully mitigated and is excited about what we did for him. Next slide. So that's the home of the Wainwrights. So this is a better picture to see over on the right. That is where the Hayes building is at, their residence. Next slide. So we have Mr. James Burdett. He is a home builder in Atoka. He gave us a letter of support. India Morel, this is actually, it's really cool for us. She lives about 6 doors down. Got on Google, calls ASPAC, says, hey, can you guys come pave my driveway? She had no idea that ASPAC was 6 doors down. She just found them on Google. So we talk about injurious to the neighborhood. Everybody knows about this. This lady lives 6 doors down and had no idea. And she was very happy with everything that got done. And again, took the time to write us a letter of engagement, or a letter of support. So that's the subject property right there. You can see the proximity to where we're at. Next slide. In addition to that, 34 nearby residents signed a petition of support. So again, if this was so injurious to the neighborhood as the presentation showed, I just don't believe there'd be 34 people nearby that would be willing to sign this. Next slide. Here, what I want to point out when we're talking about the hot mix asphalt plants, those are going to be your black circles. And if you see where we are located, that's going to be the yellow star. We are in a great position. They are in a great position as a company to be able to go to those plants, pick up the asphalt, and take them to the sites. If you look at the customer parking lots, those are going to be in pink or red, depending on your color blindness. They are in the middle of all of that, and then you see the driveways as well. So where they are located is just really central to all of their customers, where they get their material. Next slide. So, and these are just some of the people that we work. We got large customers: Bartlett, Munford, Arlington, Atoka, Bolton High School. We got Charms, Youth Villages, Wolf Chase Honda, and a ton of churches. So this isn't some just kind of rundown company that's running roughshod in this parcel. This is a well-respected company that is doing good work. Next slide, please. You have these conditions. We're going to kind of break these apart one at a time. So next slide, Josh. So here we have the new 8-foot wood fence. Up on the top, that is going to be the Wainwright's property. This has already been built. We are willing to still do this on the other side for the Hayes as well. Although it is an 8-foot fence, and it was pointed out that this, doesn't cover anything. It was clearly ignored that this is up on a berm. So we are talking about, this is no longer an 8-foot fence. A dump truck can drive through here and you will not see it. Next slide. So just having some other pictures that you can see. There we go. Next one. The hollies. Next slide. This is probably what the Wainwrights are most excited about. You can see number 2 in yellow. Next slide. These are not shrubs that we bought from Lowe's. These are mature 8-foot, 9-foot, 10-foot hollies. And Mrs. Wainwright told me this morning she's really excited for when Mr. Wainwright gets his new lungs and he feels good. He was a gardener by trade, and it's a big hobby for him. He's excited to work on this. And this is actually Leslie's idea, too. These holly trees are going to grow wider, which is just going to help cover that fence, cover the sound suppression, and they're just very excited about this. Next slide. 3 sections of pavement. We'll show you where that's at. So you see where the new sod is going to go in. Next slide. You can see most of it's been done. On the very top right, that's included. That sod's already been put out. Right in the bottom has already been done. We just have that one piece left. Number 4, section of grass to be resodded. You can see where that's at. This has been done as well. Next slide. The eastern gate. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Josh, to see where that gate is at. As it is right now, what they did, they spent a good chunk of money to be able to allow it to get queued. So this is a picture from the backside. Really nice looking fence, industrial. Here you can see the queuing. So these gates are going to be closed all the time unless someone is coming or going. Okay, so just to block any view of what's going on in there. There's a good queue for it, and you can see what it looked like before. It was just straight across, really not that much room for anybody to pull in. Next slide. New fencing to connect the residents and carport. I want to show you guys where this is at and explain it. So that is going to be the metal residence, and that's going to go to one of their buildings. This is not for them. This is to screen more for the Hayeses. So even though they weren't willing to really sit and work with us on any conditions like the Wainwrights were, We are still leaving this in here to screen that, to just be a good neighbor. Next slide. Pavement adjacent to the shop building, show you where that's at. That's right there. This looks great. That's what it looks like now. Josh, do we have what it used to look like? No, we'll show you that, what it used to look like later. The Western Drive aisle. So this was another concern that the Wainwrights had. They said that when trucks come through, there's a little bit of gravel and it kicks up some dust. You can see that 8 repave, so let's go to the next one. Go back, sorry. We don't have it. This has not been done yet. I'm surprised because they have done so much of this stuff that it's surprising when it's not done. So that's gonna completely ameliorate any dust that would get kicked up. Next slide. Roof of the metal building. That was pretty brutal when I saw that. So what we did, we got up there. I think we've put 2 or 3 coats on so far. Mr. Wainwright said he's very happy about that and that it has fixed 90% of that glare. And ASPAC is really busy right now. They're doing this on their own time. When they slow down, they're gonna add 1 or 2 more coats to pretty much completely get rid of that glare. Next slide. The exhaust fans, again, a little bit of sound. It wasn't super loud for them, but just to, again, completely ameliorate it, we're gonna put those exhaust fans on the other side. And then the last thing that I wanna talk about with the conditions is any changes to the site plan shall necessitate the filing of a correspondence application with the BOA. That is above and beyond what the UDC needs, okay? We could usually do that administratively. The reason we put that in there was, again, because the Wainwrights were very concerned, okay, what if they just start expanding their operations? And so we wanted to make sure that they knew if that was something that was gonna happen, they were gonna get public notification, they were gonna know it's gonna happen, and they would be able, again, to air any grievances that they have with that. Next slide. Next slide. And so Josh is just gonna go through some of these pictures to kind of wrap up. I just want you guys to see what this parcel looks like. Josh, just keep going. Yeah. So $143,000 have already been put in. Keep going. And so this is what this parcel looks like. This is not a hot mix asphalt plant. When you drive by this, you just wouldn't know that. And so I think when we hear those words on paper, we expect it to look a lot different than it actually does. So since this was purchased, the Feathers family has put over $1 million into this. That pond that is there, that's essentially a retention pond. We're talking about, water is flowing everywhere. That pond was getting made anyway, and so they decided to beautify the property by making that retention pond there. And then I just want to show this part right here. This is some of the best screening on God's green earth. You cannot see this at all. And all they do with this parcel back here is just park their vehicles. There is no asphalt. If there is asphalt on site, it was specifically for their own repaving. They do not store asphalt. They do not store gravel. They only have their vehicles and equipment that they use on the job sites here. So any smell of asphalt or anything like that, you saw the paving that they redid. That was quite a bit of material. That's all that was. And we'll just finish up with some of these just pictures so that we can get just a full view of what this parcel looks like. And that wraps up my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions at this time?
What year was this property? When did you acquire this property?
1995.
And, well, I'll wait till we go to general questions and ask some more.
All right. Any other questions?
Approximately how many vehicles are parked on the property?
How many vehicles? 8.
8?
Mm-hmm. Now, if the workers do come, they park in that front spot, so those are vehicles as well, but specifically for ASPAC, yes. One thing with when it was purchased, they removed almost 500,000 pounds worth of dumped material. It was 10, 20-ton dump trucks that got pulled out of there. And it was a lot of roofing materials, a lot of nails. The backhoe that they purchased to do that, just flat tire after flat tire. And so that's kind of what started the whole having some heavy machinery there and then turned into what it did.
The current owner or its family dug a pond in the property, which is in direct contradiction to the intent behind an agricultural conservation agricultural zone, the zone that it's in. How do we know that something like that won't happen again? And can you speak to that? And
Yeah, so if you see, yeah, so
about that in the future?
it's not completely level, this entire property. And you can kind of see in the front too, it's a little bit higher and it comes down. That pond was pretty much being made and it was just like a cesspool for mosquitoes having the water run down in there. And so to kind of not have it be a mosquito hotbed, that's what kind of turned it into the pond. Now, in regards to how do we make sure that nothing else expands, it stays at 72% of this being conserved, is that condition 11, is that if there is any change to the site plan, we have to go through the same process again. There's a public notification. We did make one neighbor really happy, and we made them really happy by telling them this is how it's going to stay. And so I would not want to be Ms. Feathers if she decided to not do that, because that's why we put this in here, just to let them sleep at night knowing that nothing else is going to change on that property.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. When you purchased the property, and it was,
95.
30 years ago, 30 years ago, of course it was zoned like it is, but yet you had plans for this business. Why plan and spend this much money without obtaining some type of zoning or they, 30 years of operations and money spent?
Can I be honest?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Leslie. Just ignorance, not knowing. And so then the 5 years ago when they got that courtesy citation, Ms. Feathers has been through it. She went through a really nasty divorce. That's actually how we found out about her. We're in the same building as her divorce lawyers. Obviously COVID, which affected everyone, and battle with cancer, which is in remission right now. But for the first Board of Adjustment, she was out in Houston still getting that checked up on. And so the 5 years between, hey, we got this courtesy citation and like, why is this not getting fixed? There was some massive life events that happened in her life where she was just trying to survive, and taking the time to like really address that was just a little bit too much for what she had going on, if that makes any sense.
Any other questions before, maybe Mr. Whitehead wanted to come finish up? I thought you mentioned him. He was just finishing the pictures, sorry. Okay. I'll say part of me is like, wow, y'all have done a lot to make this look better. And part of me is like, why the hell are you spending all this money when it's not approved? Y'all just keep full steam ahead. Well, we'll pave this, we'll do that. The whole time knowing there's a problem. So I don't necessarily feel bad for the money that was spent, because it seems like you went at it a little bit, I think the technical term is back-asswards.
Well, we did make a promise to the Wainwrights, and that was something, because obviously if it doesn't get approved here, I don't think this will be done. And so it's just kind of like, we want to do this for you guys, regardless of what happens. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of the neighborly thing to do. But you are right. I mean, normally a lot of people would just wait. But if we had waited, the Wainwrights wouldn't have been able to send an email that said all of the concerns that we had that appeared very, very egregious have not only been addressed, like they've just ameliorated every concern that they had, which if you go back to the staff presentation, it was talked about ad nauseum. They are closer to what is going on to that parcel than the Hayes. And if we were able to make them happy, we would have been able to make the Hayes happy as well, but they chose not to engage with us, which is totally fine.
Okay. When the permit was given for the building in 2019, do you know what, was it just applied to put a building there? Like it wasn't listed as a commercial building, or did code miss it that, hey, we should be putting a commercial building in that area?
So this parcel on the tax ID or whatever, it is it shows up as commercial.
Sure.
And so that might have been how that slipped through the cracks of it just them getting that.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I got a question of OPD, is that okay?
Yes.
In interest of full disclosure, I have done some work with Whitehead Law. They represent me on some real estate development cases. I'd just like to put that out for the record. My question for OPD is, I think in a couple points, you mentioned that this case lacked the finding of fact and a hardship. Would you consider this case to be more appropriate as a PD maybe?
As what, I'm sorry?
A planned development or another entitlement?
No. So a plan development has specific intentions as well. When you look at the purpose of a plan development, it's to be able to allow an applicant to develop something that's more desirable than what's allowed by the UDC. So its intent is to, maybe improve the environment, to allow a mixture of uses that would be better economically for an area. So its intent is for it to be a more desirable use, not a less desirable use. And so I would not believe that this would meet the intent and criteria for that either. And I did, if I may, want to respond to a couple of things that the applicant stated. So I got an email from the Wainwrights this morning, and with their intent to attend the meeting, but they're not here. But I have had a conversation with the Wainwrights after they met with the applicant. And, when the applicant states that they're happy and that their concerns were met, they also mentioned to me that they were happy that their concerns were met, but the concerns they were most happy about was the fact that they didn't have that glare anymore. It was painted. And that the exhaust fans, the noise that they were hearing had been moved. And it was yet to be seen about the dust that was concerned about. But they reiterated their concerns about the use being there in general. And he particularly specified that he's still concerned that he may be in the same situation that the Hayeses are in right now. That if he tries to sell his property, he cannot do that if that building is still there. And he also expressed concerns about the fact that it might potentially expand if we approve it as a use there, that they could continue to increase their operations. There's no limit on the operations right now. There are no proposed limits on how they operate in their conditions. There's no limits on how they expand. Yes, they have to come back with the new revised site plan, but as I showed you in that photo, there's so much that can happen on that property without us being aware of it. So I did want to at least mention that. They also mentioned that a property owner 6 properties away was in support of this. But if you look at the size of this space, a property owner that's 6 lots away is significantly far from what their operation. They are not impacted by the sound. They're not impacted by being able to serve their home because they don't have that big workshop next to their house. They're not impacted by the traffic or any other of those conditions that the Wainwrights and the Hayeses are. And so although I can appreciate that letter of support, and they mentioned they had 34 signatures, well, I wonder how many of those signatures live in this area and can be directly impacted, because you can see there aren't 34 properties even in this area right here. So I did want to at least mention that. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that area that we brought up that was not mentioned by the applicant previously, they say they live out there and they kind of just hang out on that. It wasn't disclosed initially, but there's a storage container out there as well as a facility, a building. And so I'm not sure what is happening in that storage container, what's in it, how it impacts the environment, how it impacts the ability to use that as farmland. If that lot is sold, can the person behind them come back and fulfill the intent of the Conservation Agriculture District to be able to do farmland and agricultural uses? And so that's really, other than this being a very beautiful site, and I can appreciate the work that the applicant has put into it, it does look nice, but as a homeowner or a potential buyer, I wouldn't want to live next to something like this either. I wouldn't want to look at that building. I wouldn't, want to have to worry about what type of activities are happening back in the back. So I just wanted to mention those things.
Mr. Chairman, I had one point of information. You had asked about the building in 2019.
Yes.
So they were cited in 2019 for some violations, and that large building in the front was actually built without a building permit. So there was no review.
Nothing that's been happening on the site has been permitted. The pond, the buildings, nothing has been permitted. Maybe the initial residence, I'm not sure, we didn't go back for it, but that workshop, that pond, none of that was permitted.
I'm seeing the last permit was 96, at least according to the assessor.
I had our code enforcement team to go look for permits, and they could not find them.
Mr. Chairman, may I? There's a few points that I'd like to make, and I guess the first is a request that since staff is so insistent upon their position that when you close the public hearing, that you make sure that any questions and answers between staff and the board members are not leading questions that would open themselves up to subjective answers. On the permits, Ms. Feathers received electrical permits and all the other permits from the electrical company that she receives power from. I think part of the confusion, and maybe to Mr. Mikich's point, confusion, Josh Whitehead, 275 Jefferson Avenue, by the way, stems from the fact that Poplar Grove Cooperative provides electrical service. The water service is from the city of Atoka. Southwest Electric. None of our services come from Shelby County. And so, again, to the point of not knowing, which is, not a complete excuse, but none of the services that Ms. Feathers receives are from Shelby County. And so I think that extends to the fact that the reason why she did not obtain a building permit. And I believe that storage container and the RV are temporary in nature, but if they need to be added as a condition, that they are temporary and they shall be removed within 6 months, that is certainly, we're certainly willing to do that. And I'd like just a final point. The CA district is not a residential district, right? It's in many ways a residential district plus, and the plus does allow for many businesses. And I think when you drive down Tracy Road, Brunswick Road, many other, Deadfall, many other nearby roads, you do have a lot of similar, not exact, but similar business uses. So again, Ms. Feathers did not mean to purposely snub the zoning ordinance or the building ordinance. I think that many people in her shoes would have mistakenly done the same thing. But we are trying to make things right as much as possible.
Do you mind going over, I'm looking at I guess it looks like your responses or applicants' responses to the findings of fact, that how the extraordinary narrowness of the lot prevents it from reverting it to exclusive residential use. I think that, so it says the property is described as extraordinarily narrow, which poses a significant challenge in reverting it to exclusively residential use. Why would, it looks like it's plenty wide for residential use. So just explain your thought on the uniqueness of the property.
That response, the narrowness, is also a response in conjunction with the 20 million pounds of debris that had to be removed, and I'll explain why those go in tandem. Number one, there are similarly narrow lots along the south side of Tracy Road, but as you go, the Hayes' lot is much wider than ours, and then as you travel further east along Tracy as it intersects with Austin P, you may notice that some of those narrow lots are doubled or tripled. There'd be a house that sits on 2 or 3 of those lots. So those may be deeded parcels that show up on the parcel line map of the registrar's office and the assessor's office. But in reality, many of those, if not all of them, that are narrower or as narrow as ours, actually are doubled up with the neighboring property, and houses sit on 2 or 3. So I would offer that we are the smallest and the narrowest of those lots. But that is in conjunction with the many tons of debris that had to be removed. The fiscal outlay that we had to spend when we purchased this property made it impractical. One of the tests for along with the hardship for variances, it made it impractical to utilize as a residential use.
Say that again, I'm sorry, I was looking at those lots. The last 2 sentences. Sorry, Mr. Whitehead.
The fiscal outlay that we spent removing all of those tons of debris and the flat tires that we received from removing that debris made it impractical, if not a complete hardship, to utilize that property for a single-family residence.
In layman's terms, it was so expensive to clean up, just putting a residence on it was impractical.
Yes, sir. And I realize fiscal considerations shall not be the only consideration, but it certainly may be a consideration in the calculus for a variance.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, with that, if we could get a motion to approve, or I think we always vote in the affirmative, approve BOA 2024-91.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Initial thoughts.
While we're all thinking it through, I'll just throw my initial thoughts out there to start it. It's, I think they've done a great job of showing that they're trying to be neighborly, trying to comply with what the neighbors want, trying to not run any further afoul of the code than they already are. And that's impressive and respectable. I'm still struggling with the fact that this is, that this property is a conservation agriculture zoned property, and it just seems like everything they're doing contradicts the purpose of that zoning, just trying to figure out how do we deal with that? I mean, how do you justify that contradiction? And so that's my initial thoughts. I am certainly looking forward to hearing the thoughts of the rest of you.
My initial thoughts is the audacity. This isn't their first property. This type of money wasn't generated just on a whim. There was a prior full business that funded and needed the use of this property. I'm finding it hard there was nothing that was known ahead of time. When you clear that much land, the debris goes somewhere, and there are permits that are required to get rid of certain acreage of debris. So somebody knows where the debris went. And so it came from somewhere, was deposited somewhere. So now there are people who know. And in Atoka, they have building permits too. They have zoning. Tipton County has zoning and building permits and processes in land development and planning. I'm finding it hard to believe that no one knew. That's my initial thought.
So you're saying we're moving forward and asking permission as we go?
I can't see any, when you're talking the amount of money and the insurance for an asphalt company and the SWIP and environmental permits and paperwork that has to go to agree for that to happen, and the clearing of land where you're taking mattresses and nails and stuff, that has to be taken dumped somewhere. When it's cleared off one place, it goes to somewhere else. And if you're clearing out a lot of it, then
There's some
somebody knows.
oversight.
Right, there's some oversight. I'm just finding it hard to believe that this is, no one knew. That's my initial thoughts.
I think I would like to propose, and I'd like to discuss these, that to our motion to approve, we would add the conditions supplied by the applicant. Because as the motion stands right now, there's no conditions at all.
Yes.
So I think we need to be, I think we need to be saying, if we're talking about it with those conditions in place. And the question I think is, do we think, well, one, can we grant variance, and two, are these conditions enough to make it palatable? Any thoughts on that?
Well, again, it's, I'm trying to see how we can kind of justify the use of the property when it is in direct contradiction to the whole purpose behind how the property is zoned. And just kind of putting Band-Aids here and there, doing the things on this list, that in and of itself doesn't get me there. Now, I may be able to get there. Right now I'm just struggling trying to figure out how to do that. But these things are just Band-Aids. They don't change the purpose, the fundamental purpose the fundamental way, the fact that their fundamental use of the property is in direct contradiction to the purpose of the zoning.
And it goes with the land once we approve it.
Right.
That they can do, they've already shown over 29 years that they don't have to ask anybody. So they can do whatever they want. And then now we give them, with these 11 conditions, keep going.
I'm sympathetic, and I totally am. They really have made substantial steps, but I just can't get past the muster of, to your point, Ms. Gerlach, not knowing. But again, we're steady moving the needle of getting what we want and then asking for permission behind it. Mm-hmm. And I can't push past that point of 29 years. We've kind of known what this area is used for. And albeit put beautiful, glass diamonds on the wall, doesn't change to say if I can't use it, I can't use it there. Mm-hmm. That's just kind of where I am.
Any other discussion before we vote? Seeing none, Mr. Penzis, you'll give us a roll call, please.
Mr. Bruce?
No.
Mr. Claybrook?
No.
Ms. Conrad?
No.
Mr. Love?
No.
Ms. Gerlach?
No.
Vice Chair Savage Sheldon?
No, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 will not be met and are unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
Chair Rainey?
No.
Motion
All right,
fails.
motion denied. All right, if we can move to call the next case, please. Thank you.
Item number 8, BOA 2024-94, located at 1497 and 1505 Titus Road.
All right, is the applicant present?
What number is this?
Number 8.
8, okay, thank you.
Ma'am, are you the applicant?
Ms.
Okay.
Johnson? Up to the microphone.
Yeah, and then, is there any opposition here for the Titus case? Okay, thank you. Just was making sure you're here. I was, okay. All right, Ms. Christian, could you give us a brief staff report, please? Not
Yes.
brief, but we've heard it before. Tell us what's changed since the
Yes.
last time we were here.
Yeah, just give me 1 second to pull up the report and
Oh,
I'll
yeah, for
give
sure.
a brief presentation.
I mean, you can make it as unbrief as you need to. And are you Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, you can go ahead and have a seat. I was just making sure you were the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can stand there if you want to, but we'll see how brief Ms. Christian is.
That's true. One moment, experiencing technical difficulties.
That's all right.
Computer is not complying. Is that one working? Okay, Chloe, can you present from up here? Okay. Got that one.
mic up there?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, back in business.
All right. Sorry about that. Chloe Christian with DPD. I'll be presenting. The very brief staff report of this case, BOA 2024-0094. This case was previously BOA 2024-0042. It was withdrawn by the applicant upon running out of holds. And the request is the same. The recommendation from staff is essentially the same. However, the site plan has changed. So I'll just try to go over the things that are different from the previous application. Of course, if there are any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Perfect.
So here's a location map of the property, and we sent out 89 public notices on October 30th. We did receive one phone call of opposition for this particular docket. However, we received several calls of opposition and 4 letters of opposition for the previous case. The property is zoned residential single-family 6. Here is a street view timeline of 1497 Titus. I found that this would be helpful considering the amount of change that has occurred on the property. I will say the image to the left is from 2012. This may not actually be the original condition of the home, but this is as far back as Google Street View would take us. Going to 2014 and 2016. 2019, you can see, if I can zoom in. Well, I cannot zoom in like I wanted to, but so the most significant change you can see from the front of the home is, of course, the 2022 street view. You can see that second story addition, as well as here is an aerial timeline of the property. You can see some additional building being done to the rear of the property as well. Once again, not clear exactly when this construction started, but even from 2008 to 2024, you can see an increase in the square footage of the home. Previous plans show it at about 4,300 square feet on the first floor. I will also note that none of this work was done with the appropriate building permits. So the applicant did not have permission to do any of this work. Since there are no permits filed, it also makes it difficult to know, like I said, when this work started and what exactly the breadth of the work was. Here are some photos from code enforcement of the site. These are from October 28th, so very recently. I will also say this application involves 2 properties, 1497 Titus, which is this property, and 1505 Titus. These are both under ownership by Ms. Sharon Johnson, and their requests have been separated into requests for each address to make it a little bit more easy to follow. One of the conditions that has changed from the previous case does relate to the cement brick fence, which you can see in this photo here. We're essentially recommending that this fence be removed. It's not up to code. These types of fences, as in this picture you see, are not allowed in a residential district. Here is the survey of 1505 Titus that was provided by the applicant. You can see a variety of accessory structures on the site, as well as the pool is encroaching and the deck is encroaching as well into the side setback. Here's the survey for 1497 Titus. You'll see those 2 sheds to the rear are encroaching, and our recommendation for the sheds is to reject that request for a variance, and just have the sheds be moved within the setback. If you all remember, this is the original floor plan submitted from the 2024-002 variance request. So these plans show 8 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, and 1 stage in the living room. I believe the board recommended that an alternate site plan be prepared that shows something a little bit more like a normal single-family home. And so this is the revised site plan that has been submitted by the applicant. We've got 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms. And the second floor is proposed to be entirely attic space. So we are at I believe it was 1,300 square feet for the first floor, which we do find to be appropriate size for a standard single-family home. And our conditions, these are the side elevations for the home as well. And so, like I've said, so the revised plans actually provide about 1,900 square foot first floor with 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms. And the second floor is roughly 1,500 square feet. The previous plan showed something almost double the size of that, which we conditioned to be narrowed down, which the applicant has done. As far as the sheds are concerned, we do recommend just relocating them within the setback. They should be easy to relocate. As far as the setback of the home itself, the home was originally built in 1951 and it was encroaching. So that's a legal non-conforming encroachment. And so we find that the encroachment should be allowed per our conditions. I'll also note, we've got some building inspectors from the Office of Construction Code Enforcement here, and I've been speaking with them very heavily about this case. And there's an engineer's letter that was provided as required by the court. It's going to be on pages 32 through 50 of the staff report. So no matter what, the engineer has determined that the existing structure is unsound. There's a lot of concerns about the foundation of the home and other things that are going to require some significant changes to be made either way. However, we do find that if these changes are made, they should be based upon these conditions. I'll not read through all of them for the interest of time, but they basically restrict the size of the home. And one condition I will note is going to be condition 1H, that is requiring the parking pad in the front yard to be dug up and removed to just provide a 12-foot wide driveway. We are requiring as well that building permits be applied for by the applicant. And these are the conditions for 1505 Titus. They are essentially the same as the previous conditions, except for condition 2I related to the cinder block fence. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
I got a quick question about the fence. Could they front that with brick and then it would be okay?
Mr. Chairman, we've actually been working on a condition to answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah, we were going to recommend that maybe they do a parge coat, which is a thin layer of concrete or mortar that makes it a smooth surface and gives it the appearance of like it's a stucco. So if you guys are amenable to that, we could just change that condition I to read something to the effect that the center block wall shall be covered with the parge coats subject to DPD approval, review and approval.
Okay, yeah.
Which they could, then if they wanted to do some kind of brick or something, we could allow that as well, but the parge coat's probably
coat would have been allowed already, correct?
It
Or is
says
that-
brick, but, we would have, we do administrative deviations for some things, so there's some
Right.
flexibility, as long as it has the appearance of a finish.
That's a nice looking fence.
Correct.
Yeah, correct. Okay. Any other questions of staff? Hey, Ms. Christian, could you go back to the floor plan of the house where we removed a lot of that right there? Can you point, I'm just trying to orient myself again where the front of the house is. Is it
Yes.
where the concrete is down there? That's the front. Okay, so the bottom is the front.
Yeah, the bottom
Okay.
is the front and the top would be the backyard area.
Perfect. All right. Any other questions for staff?
I do have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Christian, can you talk a little bit about, and I'm sorry if you made this clear, but can you speak a little bit to the structural integrity? You mentioned that there were some engineering issues.
So I'll go to the engineer's letter.
And if I may quickly, so regarding the structural integrity, Like, essentially, that would be construction enforcement would have to review that, and either they would have to get, a contractor to fix it and then have it reevaluated, say by Poe Engineering or any other engineering firm, and submit that evidence to construction enforcement, or essentially demo and rebuild.
Yeah, I will say, so on page 34 of the staff report, just looking at the inspection notes of that engineer's letter, talking about roof leaks common throughout, framing errors that create loads that cannot transfer loads onto the foundation properly. Several areas of ceiling and floor framing are overspanned or improperly constructed. Blackboard sheathing is not adequate for shear transfer. There's up to 16 inspection notes on the page regarding the structural integrity of the addition.
So would it be, just to make certain that this building is safe,
So that's what I was trying to get to. So construction and code enforcement would ensure that the building is safe to occupy. I believe it currently there are parts that has a do not occupy because of those issues.
Got it.
And this is considered a 3-bedroom house because bedroom 1 isn't a bedroom. It's 5 feet wide. And it doesn't have a closet, which means it's also not a bedroom. Just a comment.
Well, our condition said they could have up to 4, so however it works out, if it's only 3, or if
You're
the
saying-
office became a bedroom, it would.
They could have up to 4 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it, yeah, before it had a lot, y'all weren't here for our last meeting, but it was intense. It was intense. And so this is like, we gave the applicant as much instructions we could without, and so I think they've come back with a pretty good plan compared to what we had before.
And we were on Fall Break.
Size-wise, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Footprint is much better.
Because they can build a second floor onto that with, additional engineering and stuff that'd be required, and so and move a bedroom upstairs and not have that be a bedroom. Any other questions of staff before we move to the applicant? Okay. All right, Miss, is it Johnson? Okay, if you can come forward, give your name and address for the record.
Sharon Johnson, 1497 Titus Road.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and do you want to talk about some of the conditions?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna get to mine. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I had asked the engineer guy and the architect to accommodate, what you all had discussed with me when I was here. I let him know we gotta get rid of all of the rooms that's in the back, narrow the rooms down to 3 or 4, and the bathrooms down to 3. And he said that I will have to sacrifice and get rid of all the stuff that's in the back of the house. All that, the addition, that game room, the room up on top, the other 4 bedrooms, I gotta get rid of all of it. So I agreed to it, so it all was gone. So he took all them rooms away. Took all those rooms away, took all the bathrooms away. And he only just kept the 3 rooms that was in the front, and he said he was gonna knock the walls out and just make the room a little bigger, put the closet and everything like that. And upstairs, it'll just be the space where I can use it and put a storage space, like an attic, that's it. And put the 2 doors on the side of it. And so the window from the other house, like the bathroom window, it would be the back porch then, so it'll stretch out. So the house is gonna become smaller, much smaller. So it's gonna get really back to pretty much the size that it was, pretty much. So The only thing, the difference is just gonna be up on one side of it, you know, with attic space.
Right.
Where I can put attic space there. And the encroachment, back to that was on the house. The bricks that was made between 1505 and 1497 is just a couple of inches over. It's the bricks that they talking about, not a whole foot or nothing, just a couple of inches on the property of 1505 that I own. That's the encroachment they was talking about. And I seen in there where it said that 1505 haven't had no remodeling to it. So I don't know why they came up with that. I haven't remodeled 1505 at all. It's the original house that I bought years and years ago. It's still the same house. So I don't know about that. The only thing about that was the encroachment, and I did pull a permit for the fence for both of them. And they said, code enforcement said I can get a fence. If it's 4 foot with the block, I will have to put the raw iron at the top for a foot, but it can't go no higher than 8 feet. They should be able to see up through there. So that's why I did it 4 feet. And then on the corner, since the 1505 is on a corner lot, the traffic would have to be able to see when they coming down that way to make sure they safe when there's a stop sign. So that's why I had the guy years ago, he tore all those bricks down even lower. He tore them down to 2 feet. And then the fence will go on up.
Okay.
The raw iron fence will go up on that side on 1505.
I'm gonna stop you just for 1 second to ask a question. Okay. If she puts the wrought iron on top, can it stay the block, or does it still need to be fronted with something?
Either parge coat or brick. And I believe the fence permit that she had actually showed brick.
Okay. Yeah, the difference between brick versus the block is the problem. So did you hear what they're saying? Like, you either need to front it with brick, like actual brick, not cinder block, or you can do a parch coat, which is like, it kind of makes it look like stucco.
Yes. They just haven't finished it yet. They
Okay.
was gonna put the brick in the front. Those the bricks that you see in front of 1497. Those the bricks that they was gonna finish putting in there, but when they stop work, they just can't do any more work. I won't allow any more work until you know, let me know when this will go and, you know, when I have
That makes
money.
sense.
Right. Yeah, they was definitely gonna put bricks all in front of there, and then I was gonna do the raw iron, and then they'll be able to still see and everybody be safe. Yes.
Any other comments? I mean, did you have anything else you wanted to tell us?
I'm trying to think of anything else. Yes, and about the pavement, about the concrete thing. Okay, even if it's 4 adults that me and my children, well, 2 or 3 of my kids probably be moving back in the house, how will we be able to park if I don't have the concrete that's already there? I will have to take some away, break up some of it, and, well, can I at least keep 2 driveways, or how can I do that?
Staff want to answer that.
Each individual house can have its own driveway.
Sir? Yes, I have, you know, my son is married. Him and his wife have a car. And my other son, him and his girlfriend have a car. So, you know, they don't share cars. We don't share cars. Don't nobody drive my Jeep, so I have my own vehicle. I have 2 of them. I don't let none of my children drive mine, so I have 2 vehicles, a truck and that. So I have 2, and I just don't want to park them on the street because that area is kind of got bad. I've been there almost 28 years, so I know. And it done got bad. They do break in. We had a couple of break-ins, you know, a couple days ago, but they do break in. They break in your vehicles when they're on the street.
Right.
Or they'll come in your driveway and break in them too. They did that too before. So
Understood, but the code doesn't allow you to have 4 cars in front of a house. Like, that's just not something you can do. You know, we've had people, we've ripped out many a front yard parking pad for people that, like, oh, we got 4 cars, but like, I mean, one lady, put a cover over it, and she is in a wheelchair, but we just couldn't allow it. It messes up. I get the safety concern, but I think there's just a problem with like, we just don't want to concrete yards like that. That's not the aesthetic the city wants.
I want to ask you a question too. On the side of 1505, all of that space right there, what should I do with that space right there? Because it was a fence right there. I remember you all mentioned the storage building that's in the back of that space. It was a fence right there, but the fence was taken down for the guy to put the storage building back there. Can I get that fence put back up right there? It goes right there at the edge of the house right there, and it goes across.
Ms. Christian, can you give us a good overhead of 1505? And 1505 is on the bottom, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's the one with the angle?
It's a big space, big space.
Trying to see if you can see a fence.
In the front house, 1505.
Could you cover over the 2024 one, the most recent one? And then, Ms. Johnson, could you just try to explain what fence that you're referring to based on this drawing?
Okay, yeah, right there. That's the storage building right there, where the hand is at. That space that's beside the house. The house is the gray part. That's that big house. All of that, yes, all of that is vacant. All of that is vacant.
Right.
And see, the fence was right there at the edge of the house, all the way to the fence, right there where the hand is at.
Okay,
well,
so
at the edge
that kind of zigzag doing this was a fence.
Exactly. You can
Okay.
tell. Yeah, you can tell.
I mean, you can't have a fence like that in the front yard, can you, unless it's 4 feet?
Right, correct. If it's like wood, 4 feet.
Yeah.
Only wrought iron fences can be taller than 8 feet, or the, brick combination with wrought iron. But the brick stops at the 4 feet other than the columns.
But she could have a fence technically from the front of the house, closest to Titus, to the sideline. Does that make to the diagonal line? Is that allowed? Because it's behind the facade?
Yes, if it's in line with the front facade of the house and then going straight south, you could have an 8-foot wood fence at that point.
Does that make sense?
That's what I was asking, right there at the edge of the house to just put the fence back. It was a wood fence.
Yeah.
And it's just leaning up against the fence now, the block fence on the side where that gravel is, yeah.
Like you still have that fence that was taken down?
I still have the 6 foot, regular fence.
But it couldn't go back in the exact same spot. It'd have to be even
Right
with the
there.
front of the house going straight south.
It was from that edge of the gray house. You see the roof right there? It was from there all the way to there.
Yeah, that sounds like it makes sense. Okay. Any other questions for us?
I think that's about it.
Okay. Or do we have any questions for her? Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, if we could get a motion to approve BOA 2024-94 as conditioned by staff.
Second.
Any further discussion on this one?
Just, can we add our friendly amendment?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So we'll be revising condition 2I to state the cinder block wall shall be covered with a parge coat or brick subject to administrative review and approval by the Division of Planning and Development.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Why don't you go and give us a roll call vote?
Ms. Scurlock.
Yes.
Mr. Love.
Yes.
Mr. Bruce.
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook.
Yes.
Ms. Conrad. Vice Chair Savage Selden.
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Chair Rainey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for coming back down to see us. Are there any announcements?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right, you too. We do announcement from don't we have a party on the 12th? Do you mind giving us, what are the details on that,
Yes, and we're preparing an e-bite that we'll send out, but it's going to be from 5:30 to 8:30, and it's in East